You ever wake up and wonder if life was just a cruel dream? Because that's how it felt for me. The night my heart almost stopped. The nurses rushed around me, shouting things I barely understood. Pressure dropping. Start compressions. Stay with us, Mrs. Johnson. And through all that noise, I could still hear the sound of the heart monitor. Beep, beep, beep. Each one felt like a countdown. The doctor leaned over me, his eyes filled with the kind of sadness that only comes from experience. He whispered to the nurse, thinking I couldn't hear, "She won't make it till morning." But I heard him. Every word. I wanted to scream. To tell him I wasn't ready. That I still had things left to say, prayers left to pray. But my body, it didn't move. My mind was awake, but my soul felt halfway between heaven and earth. And while I lay there, fighting for every breath, something unholy was happening miles away. In the place I called home, my children, the same ones I raised with faith, love, and sacrifice, were sitting around my kitchen table, signing papers. Papers that would sell my home, my memories, my legacy. They thought I'd never open my eyes again. They thought by morning, they'd be free to divide everything I had worked for. They didn't know that while the world had given up on me, God hadn't. Because at 3:17 a.m., something happened. I saw light, warm, golden, and peaceful. I saw my husband, standing there smiling, saying, "Not yet, baby. It's not your time." And then, I gasped for air. My heart monitor spiked. The nurse shouted, "She's back. She's breathing." Tears rolled down her face. But she didn't know the truth, that God Himself had whispered life back into me. But that miracle, it came with a lesson I wasn't ready for. Because when I finally left that hospital, I realized that the battle for my life wasn't over. It had just changed. They took my house. They took everything I owned. But what they didn't take was the God who gave me a second chance. When the doctors finally said I was strong enough to go home, I felt like I was being reborn. Every step down that hospital hallway felt like a victory, a reminder that God still had a purpose for me. The nurse helped me pack my few things. She smiled and said, "You've been given a second chance. Mrs. Johnson, you're one of the lucky ones." I smiled back, not knowing that the world I was about to walk into wasn't mine anymore. The taxi stopped right in front of the gate where my roses used to bloom. But something felt off the moment I stepped out. The house looked empty. The curtains were gone. The porch light that always stayed on dark. My heart began to pound. I knocked on the door, expecting my son to open it. But instead, a stranger's voice came from inside. "Can I help you, ma'am?" I froze. This is my home," I whispered. He frowned, looked confused. "No, ma'am. We just bought this place last month." The world went silent. My knees almost gave out. I stood there, the wind brushing against my hospital gown. My suitcase slipping from my hand. I had been in the ICU fighting for my life. And while I was gone, my own blood had sold the roof over my head. My neighbors came out one by one, staring with pity. One of them, Mrs. Harris, walked up and hugged me. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. "They said you weren't coming back. Your kids, they sold it fast." Those words, "they sold it fast," burned in my chest like fire. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd prayed over, gone. The walls that held my wedding pictures. The floor where my babies took their first steps. Even the rocking chair my husband built me before he passed, gone. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on a park bench with my little suitcase beside me, watching the stars and asking God, why? Why did you bring me back? Just to break me again? Why save me from death, only to leave me with nothing? But deep inside, something whispered, "You're not homeless. You're just in between miracles." And that's when I realized, maybe this wasn't the end of my story. Maybe God wasn't done showing me His plan. Because sometimes, before He rebuilds your life, He has to tear down everything that wasn't meant to stay. That night, I walked with no destination, just me, my little hospital bag, and the cold wind wrapping around my shoulders like loneliness itself. Every step hurt. Not because of my illness, but because my heart was heavier than my body could carry. I walked past the corner store, the one where my husband used to buy me roses every Sunday. I passed by the bus stop where I'd wait to pick my kids up from school. Each place held memories, but none of them held me anymore. And when my legs finally gave up, I found myself sitting on the church steps. The same church where I used to sing in the choir, where I got married, where I buried my husband. The doors were closed, but I knew God was listening. I looked up at the night sky and said, through tears, Lord, they took everything from me. My house, my peace, my family. But I know you didn't bring me this far to leave me. I cried until my throat burned. I cried until the streetlights blurred into stars. And then, something happened. A voice, soft, gentle, came from behind me. Ma'am, are you all right? I turned around. It was a young woman, maybe in her 30s, wearing a nurse's jacket. I recognized her instantly. She was the nurse who had held my hand during my worst night in the ICU. She said, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about you. Something told me to drive by the church. Tears rolled down my face. Baby, I don't have anywhere to go, I whispered. Without hesitation, she said, then you're coming with me. That night, she took me to her home, a small apartment, but filled with warmth, laughter, and the smell of faith. Her name was Lena. She made me tea, tucked a blanket around me, and said, you may have lost your house, but you didn't lose your home in God. Those words, they healed something inside me that the hospital never could. For the first time in weeks, I slept not because I was tired, but because I felt safe. And as I drifted off, I whispered a prayer. God, if you're not finished with me yet, show me why you brought me back. Little did I know, that prayer was about to change everything. Because the same God who let me lose everything was already setting up my miracle. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of gospel music playing softly from the kitchen. For a second, I forgot where I was. Then I saw Lena, that sweet nurse, humming while making breakfast, like she'd known me her whole life. She smiled and said, good morning, sunshine. How's your heart feeling today? And I couldn't help but laugh a little, because for the first time in months, I felt something I thought I'd lost forever. Peace. As I sipped my tea, Lena sat across from me. She said, Mrs. Johnson, I know this might sound strange, but last night when I saw you on those church steps, God told me something. I looked at her, curious. She took my hand and said, He told me to help you. Not out of pity, but out of purpose. I didn't know what to say. Tears filled my eyes again, but this time, they weren't from pain, they were from gratitude. Over the next few days, Lena helped me get back on my feet. She drove me to the doctor, helped me refill my medicine, even brought me to church every Sunday. One Sunday, after service, a man approached me. He was tall, with kind eyes and a calm smile. He said, Ma'am, I heard your testimony. I own a few properties nearby, and one of them's been empty for years. If you don't mind, I'd like to offer it to you rent-free, until you can get settled. I thought I misheard him. Rent-free, I repeated, my voice shaking. He nodded. God blessed me with more than I need. It's time I share it. I covered my face with my hands and cried right there in the church hallway, because that was my miracle. Not a mansion, not a lottery win, but a roof, a home, given by the same God my children forgot to believe in. When I walked into that little house, I knew it was meant for me. There was a rocking chair by the window, almost identical to the one my husband built me years ago. I sat in it, and it felt like he was right there beside me, smiling. I whispered, You did it again, Lord. You never forgot me. Sometimes, God doesn't give you back what you lost. He gives you something better, something that can't be sold, stolen, or signed away. Because what I got that day wasn't just a home, it was hope. And the more I looked around that little living room, the more I realized, when people turn their backs on you, that's when God turns his face toward you. It's been 2 years since that night on the church steps. 2 years since I lost everything I thought I needed, and found everything I truly needed in God. That little house the kind man gave me. It became my sanctuary. Every morning, I'd sit by the window in my rocking chair, Bible in hand, sunlight kissing my face, and I'd whisper, "Thank you, Lord, for not giving up on me when everyone else did." But you know what I realized? That house wasn't just for me. It was a seed. A place where broken people could come, sit, talk, and heal, just like I did. Word spread around the neighborhood that old Miss Johnson would listen to you, pray with you, feed you if you were hungry. And before I knew it, my living room turned into a little circle of hope. Every Thursday, we'd gather folks from every walk of life to share stories, sing hymns, and thank God for another day. One evening, while we were praying, the door opened quietly, and there stood my oldest son. He looked thinner, older, not from age, but from guilt. He said softly, "Mama, I'm sorry." The room went silent. Tears filled my eyes. I stood up slowly, my hands trembling, and I said, "Baby, I forgave you the day it happened. Because if I held that pain, I would have missed my blessing." He fell into my arms, crying like a child again, and for the first time in a long time, I felt peace wrap around me like a warm blanket. Because forgiveness, that was the final miracle. It didn't change the past, but it changed my heart. You see, sometimes God will let you lose what you love most. Not to punish you, but to position you. I thought losing my house was the end. But it was just the beginning of the story he was writing for me. Now, when I tell people about my journey, I always say this: they sold my house. But they couldn't sell my faith. Because faith doesn't live in walls or wood, it lives in your soul. And as long as you still have breath, God can still build something beautiful out of what's been broken. So if you're watching this right now, feeling lost, forgotten, or betrayed, let me remind you, God hasn't forgotten your name. You might be standing in ruins today, but tomorrow, you could be standing in your miracle. All you have to do is hold on, because I'm living proof that when people close doors, God opens a home.